The pledge, if we'd all stand.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For several months now, we've had a vacant seat up here, and I am very happy that we'll be filling this seat tonight. And so with that, I would like to recognize our municipal judge, the Honorable Maurice Hilliard. Let's have a hand for Maurice Hilliard.
Mayor, thank you. Can we get the candidate or the newly elected council member up here? You want to
Mrs. Price, Dr. Price, is there anyone you wish to join you at the podium? As you're sworn in, I know your husband is in Washington representing us.
No, we can just proceed.
Proceed. All right.
All right. If you will place your left hand on that Bible and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I solemnly swear that I, and state your name,
I solemnly swear that I, Elizabeth Clark Price,
will support the Constitution of the United States
will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Georgia,
and of the state of Georgia,
and that I will in all respects
observe
the provisions of the Charter and ordinances
observe the provision of the Charter and ordinances
of the city of Roswell, and I will well and truly perform the duties of the office of member of City Council, and that I will, to the utmost of my skill and ability, endeavor to promote the interest and property of said city without fear, favor, or affection. So help me God.
Let's have a hand for Council Member Price.
Before you can go up and take your seat, you've got to do that.
Councilmember Price, before you take your seat, I'd like to give you the opportunity to address the room, and then the council would like the opportunity to have their photograph taken with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you all very much for coming and being here this evening for whatever purposes. There are many things on the agenda tonight, so let's just get moving towards it. I appreciate all the support you've given me in the past and will in the future, and I endeavor to do this job to the utmost of my ability. Thank you.
Congratulations. Hey, how are you? I'm fine, and you? Good. Good.
I'm not going to shake your hand. No, don't.
Get away.
You're an elected official. It's been a long time since you ran, but I can't remember who ran against you last.
I can.
All right, thank you. Is that it, guys? Thank you. Good job. Hello. I apologize, my voice just comes in. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Betty, you can do a better job than that. Let's speak up a little bit.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Betty Price. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. Does anyone in the audience have any questions regarding the consent agenda? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion by Councilmember Price, raise their hands. Well, there you go. There you go. Councilmember Price wins her first motion with a unanimous approval. At this time, we'll recognize Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given the number of people in the room tonight, we'd like to move item number 4 to the front of the agenda, RZ 09-11, a text amendment to allow for the keeping of companion animals and poultry in the backyard of a single-family residential area. This is the first reading. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Councilman DiPolito. This is a proposed text amendment to allow for backyard poultry in residential areas. This item was reviewed at committee a couple of times. Included in the proposed ordinance is a definition of poultry. It allows for the keeping of roosters. The maximum number of poultry allowed is 25. There's also a provision for people to keep up to 15 additional birds on their backyard. This is the section of the ordinance dealing with the definitions. It includes a definition of livestock, includes a definition of poultry. This is the provisions being proposed for section 10.41. It calls out the maximum number of 25, indicates that the poultry has to be within a pen or fenced area, cannot roam free. It also includes the location that they cannot be used as a commercial use. They have to be for personal use only, as well as the prohibition for nuisance. This is the section of the code that amends the table, allowing for poultry to be a permitted use in the residential districts. As you can see, it crosses through, not including poultry or hogs. That was the section of the ordinance that the judge found to be inadequate for enforcement. The non-conforming section of the code allows for an additional 15 birds to be kept for a maximum of 40. This is required within 90 days of the approval of this ordinance. As you can see in this section of the ordinance, there is a blank. It has a proposed fee to be for the permit for those additional birds. Staff would recommend a $50 fee be put in that location that would cover the administrative and the paperwork needed just to process the permit. When this ordinance was reviewed by the Planning Commission, there were several recommended changes or deletions. I'll go through those specifically. The first one was to exclude geese and turkeys from the definition of poultry. They recommended that Section B of Section 10.41 be revised for the size of the lot for the number of chickens that would be allowed. They did not specify a specific number, but they thought it would be more appropriate for the larger lots to have larger numbers of chickens, while smaller lots have smaller ones. They wanted the provision dealing with the use to be only for the household, to allow someone to raise chickens and have eggs and be able to take them to a farmer's market like we have down at the Roswell Park. The next amendment deals with the enclosures, that homeowners with large lots should be able to move their location of, in essence, a chicken tractor to the front of the property if they have such a large lot that would not be a nuisance to the surrounding area. They felt it was too restrictive, restricting the chickens and their enclosures to the side and rear lot. They felt that the motion-activated lights and the fences for the chicken area should not be a violation. That was in Section F of the ordinance. And they felt there should be some grandfathering of existing chickens that people would have currently. Those were the recommended amendments that Planning Commission voiced at their public hearing when they reviewed the text amendment. In summary, staff would recommend approval of the first reading of the text amendment to allow for the allowance of keeping poultry in the backyard of the single-family residential area.
Mr. Davidson, would you read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances and the zoning ordinance regarding keeping of livestock and poultry within the city limits of Roswell. Now, therefore, pursuant to their authority, the Mayor and City Council adopt the following ordinance. The zoning ordinance of the City of Roswell is hereby amended by adding new definitions to Article 3 of the City of Roswell zoning ordinance. Section 3.1, definitions for livestock and poultry as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference. The zoning ordinance of the City of Roswell is hereby amended by adding a new chapter 10.41, poultry, to Article 10, specific use requirements, to read as follows. Again, the text of which is incorporated herein by reference. The zoning ordinance of the City of Roswell is hereby amended by deleting in Article 5, part of Table 5.1, the words not including poultry and hogs to the permitted use in E1 and conditional use in E2 for livestock, and adding as a permitted use in residential zoning districts the keeping of poultry to Table 5.1 to read as follows. The text of which is again incorporated herein by reference, and there is also added a non-conforming number of poultry section, again, which is included herein by reference, and if approved, this would be the first reading of the ordinance.
At this time, I would like to recognize anyone in the audience who wishes to be heard on this issue. If you wish to be heard, raise your hand. I'll recognize you. Come forward to the microphone, give us your name and address, and I would like you to fill in a speaker card before you leave. So if you'd like to be recognized, raise your hand. Yes, sir. Well, we'll take one at a time. Yes, sir, the man in the back first, and we'll come to the guy in the black check shirt. And again, I apologize for my uncharacteristically loss of a voice.
Not a problem. Mayor, council members, as a neighbor who no longer sleeps with their windows...
I apologize. Name, address, and then you may proceed.
Keith Badalamenti, address is 355 Alpine Drive. And I have filled out a comfort card. As a neighbor who no longer sleeps with their windows open, I thank you for this amendment. While there's been a lot of opposition to it and people voicing their opinion against it, there are people here that are in favor of this amendment and actually encourage it to be stiffer than what it already is. Nobody wants to be the person to separate a man from his pets. I have my pets. I love my pets. I encourage people to have pets. But if a person was to have 25 to 40 cats in their house, you'd be calling the animal control on them and having that house investigated. I don't see where the difference is by having 40 chickens roaming around your property, whether they're contained, running in and out of the house, or across the property. It just isn't right living in a city. If you want to have a farm, go out in the country and have a farm. As this gets through its further revisions and the rest of the process, I encourage you to remove any additional sections allowing for it to go above 25. 25 is more than enough for chickens on a property, regardless of the size of the lot. I'd even encourage you to consider reducing it further, less than 25. Again, 25 is plenty for chickens running around a residential neighborhood. If roosters are to be allowed, then certainly add provisions limiting the number. Can you imagine what it would sound like to have 25 roosters waking you up in the morning? It's a lot of noise. I know that people argue that they're not that loud, but as a neighbor who lives next to it, it is that loud. Again, I've talked with other neighbors, and yes, there's neighbors that love going over there playing with the chickens, and it's fun to see them running across the property and the kids chasing them. It's entertainment. It's fun. But this is not the place to have a farm. And that's what this is equating to. If you give him an inch, he's going to push it to the max. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next gentleman in the black and white check shirt.
Good evening. I'm Ted Gum, 610 Boulder Way, Roswell 30075. I've had experience as a child of living in a neighborhood of small houses with 50 by 100 foot lots where a chicken farm or the backyard was used for a chicken farm, and the condition of the lot was deplorable. I now live in a neighborhood of $500,000 plus homes. And the neighbor has decided to raise turkeys, a turkey and pheasants in his backyard. The condition of that yard, once again, is deplorable. I was very glad to see that maybe turkeys might be eliminated by one of the recommendations. I have found three what I feel are real shortcomings in the ordinance. Two of them have been somewhat addressed. One of them is the restriction to the lot size. I think that's very critical. But I also think it's very critical to add some design requirements to the type of fence that would be used to enclose the chickens. We look out at a fence that's made of wood and chicken wire that, quite frankly, looks like it should be in a ghetto. I feel like that there should be some type of enclosure, if this ordinance is passed, that would restrict the view of the deplorable conditions behind the fence. And I am also very concerned about the noise situation and how that is going to be judged and how it's going to be enforced. A gobbling turkey at all times is as much of a nuisance as a barking dog. And I am certain that a rooster, I would feel the same way about a rooster. The only difference is you can make a neighbor take a dog inside, but you can't make a neighbor take a turkey or a rooster inside. So those are the three concerns that I have if the ordinance is passed. But overall, I am against the ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Who would like to speak next? Anyway, just say no. Yeah, if no one else wishes to speak, I'll close this. Recognize it. I've lost my voice.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Name?
Address.
I'm going to turn this meeting. Wait a minute, it came back. I'm going to turn this meeting over to Mayor Pro Tem for the moment because my voice is coming and going. Can't.
All right, if you would please state your name and address and then whatever you'd like to say to.
My name is Jody Easter Smith, and I live on 720 Hembry Road in Roswell. I think the ordinance sounds great. I also have chickens. When I moved here, I did not realize that people had a problem with them, but they were my pets. And I feel like that it's what the ordinance has stated is very acceptable. I do understand the concerns. I certainly would not want to live next to somebody who has hundreds of chickens, but I feel like that most people that have roosters are very well educated and know they need to put them away. I'm a school teacher. I've been a school teacher in Roswell for 10 years. And I know Andrew, you guys have had a lot of dealings with him. He has donated eggs for the school so that we can watch chickens hatch. We incubate them and we get to watch the life cycle, which is awesome. Today we had 2 hatch. So it's been a wonderful experience. I feel like that, there should be some ordinance in place. Like my neighbor had some chickens and they were slaughtering them, and that I didn't agree with. I mean, they were using it as their food. But people that want to keep them as pets, who's to say what pet is a good pet? My neighbor's dogs keep me awake every night. My chickens don't. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Jody, a question for you. Jody? Question for you. How big of a lot do you have, and how many chickens do you have?
2 acres.
2 acres? And about how many chickens do you have?
4.
4. Okay, thank you. All right, others to speak? You can raise your hand. Yes, sir, in the yellow shirt and overalls. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Andy Schneider. I live in the community of Johns Creek. Most people nationwide know me as the Chicken Whisperer. I have a nationally broadcast radio show about keeping backyard poultry. I'm the founder organizer of the Atlanta Backyard Poultry Meetup Group with about 2 members shy of 800. I'm a contributor for Mother Earth News Magazine, Grit Magazine, and the Farmer's Almanac. I've worked with many communities around this great nation in developing backyard poultry, keeping laws and ordinances. And one thing I ask all the groups and cities when we sit down to talk about coming up with an ordinance, and no one ever really has an answer, is I think if you look at the current laws and ordinances that are already in place, you probably have more than enough laws and ordinances to enforce any problem that would come out of somebody keeping some backyard chickens. For example, people will ask, well, what if a rooster starts crowing at 4:30 in the morning? How do you handle a dog barking at 4:30 in the morning right now? What if a dog gets loose at 3 p.m. in the afternoon and is running around the neighborhood? Well, what if a chicken is doing the same thing? What if a garbage pail stinks or their yard stinks? What if a chicken pen stinks? I'm sure there's already plenty of ordinances already on the books to handle really any problems that would come out of someone keeping backyard poultry already. I think if the rules and ordinances are looked at before having kind of selective enforcement of people having backyard poultry in a residential neighborhood. So I just wanted to make that comment as well. Maybe a question are there, because I ask all the city councils across the nation when we go, do you think, again, maybe your opinion if you're not certain, that there are already enough laws and ordinances on the books to handle any problem that may come around? I mean, a dog may maul a 3-year-old girl to death, but a little hen's definitely not going to do that. That when we compare and put it in perspective, I should say. I don't know if anybody knows. No questions or answers? Do y'all know if there's already enough ordinances to address problems you think might come about from having poultry? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak? And if there are any, you may want to come on and move forward so we don't miss any hands. But yes, sir. There's space on the front row if anybody does want to move up.
My name is Andrew Wordies. I live at 335 Alpine Drive, and I forgot one thing I need to bring. We keep speaking of grandfathering me in. This is Webster's Law Dictionary that has the legal definition of grandfathering. All I ask is that I be grandfathered in with the legal definition of grandfathering. I brought a couple little pets just to give you an idea of how unusual the ordinance could be from a size-wise perspective, and I want all the council members to see these. These are all full-grown birds. bear with me a moment. Let me give this to someone. Let me cover them up. So I think the number is just that. It's a number. It really doesn't mean a lot because I could have 25 of the little miniature button quail in this box and it wouldn't be a problem. I just asked that I be grandfathered in and that rooster be allowed as the ordinance calls for. I think 25 is a fine number going forward, and I think there are enough laws on the books already to control any other situation that may arise. Anyone have anything to say? Jerry? Thank you very much.
Mr. Werdes, I do have a question for you.
Sure.
You live on an acre and you're okay with 25. We have some lots that are fairly small. I believe we can go down to as little as 6,000 square feet. That's a lot smaller than your lot. Is it reasonable to say that should be scaled down from 25 on an acre basis?
I don't think so because I've got, if you add my pheasant, my quail, my chuckers, my partridge, my chickens, my miniature chickens, I've got 200 birds probably. But 25 of them are in a 10-gallon tank in my living room, so at 25 I wouldn't be allowed to have anything outside my house. If you start going by scaling down numbers, I think there's noise ordinances and smell ordinances, and you've got Fulton County Animal Control if there's a health issue that we pay a yearly fee to take care of these problems.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments for or against? Yeah, yes, ma'am.
My name's Carmen Ford. I'm at 585 Upper Hembry Road in Roswell. I have chickens. I live on land that has been here since before Roswell was here, and it has been a working farm for off and on all of those years. Unfortunately for me, to work the farm now, it is not zoned agricultural any longer. And I'm finding as I stand here repeatedly over the last several months that this hurts, to be a long-standing member of a community that is suddenly being forced into the rules and progress of tomorrow without an accurate observation as to what that vision could be for Roswell. And I ask y'all to think very carefully and very hard about what you're going to do for and against everybody. I have enough land to have lots and lots and lots of chickens. Right now, I'm down to 9. They don't bother anybody, and anybody's welcome to come and have a look. And I haven't had any complaints. I get plenty of eggs, and as I said several months ago, leave me alone. Let me do my thing. Homeowners associations can work to govern some of the other neighborhoods. Some of them cannot. I understand that some guidelines are necessary, but as Andrew stated, and Andy, that there are things out there already to cover nuisances and noise issues and things like that. I mean, we trust people to be basically good. So if they're not, send code enforcement and talk to them about it. That's really all I have. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Tamara Barhar, and my address is 445 Longleaf Drive, Roswell. And this is my daughter, Ileana. She's 4 years old, and together we're holding 2 of her roosters. And just to dispel the myth that all roosters are big bad roosters, these are cute little pets. These are Saramas and Banty chickens. Together we have 7 chickens right now. They take up very little room, and they're not a nuisance. They're cute and cuddly, and most of my roosters will fall asleep in my arms. They're just kind of like lap dogs. So I want to dispel the myth that roosters are big bad characters. A responsible rooster owner will bring them in at night and not allow them out early in the morning. That just makes sense. You want to get along with your neighbors. You don't want to have problems. Just like a dog. Some dogs, they sure bark a lot. And they need to be brought inside at times like that. As for the number of chickens, if you have 25 chickens and half of them are quail, I mean, that really requires very little space. Chickens are not like cats. They're not constantly reproducing like cats. You can't compare cats and dogs to chickens. Chickens are flock animals. So thank you for letting me...
Question for you.
Sure.
When you say take them in, what do you do with your roosters?
Yeah, they come into the garage at night.
So you put them in an enclosed garage at night so that they don't crow in the morning?
Yeah. So that's been our solution. And some of my friends, they put them in a shed at night and close the door. So.
Enclosed shed?
Yeah.
And how many chickens do you have?
We have 7 right now. We've had as many as a dozen.
And approximately how big is your lot?
Huh?
How big is your lot?
We have almost an acre.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Any other comments? Yes, sir. In the back.
Hi, my name is Mark Russell. My address is 4227 Harris Ridge Court, Roswell, Georgia. Just want to make a comment. I am a new chicken owner. My wife is very much into chickens. She has been for a long time. She grew up on 200 acres. I grew up in Martin's Landing. And so chickens were kind of a new thing. We have 3 kids. We have a very small lot. Just in case you guys don't know, chickens take up a very small amount of space when they're in the coop. They only require a bantam chicken, I think, I'm not a pro, but she's told me I think it's 1.5 cubic square feet, which is like this much, just a real little bit. And then for full size, I think it may be 2 square feet. We have, and I want to put myself on the radar here, but I think we have 7, 10, 12 chickens, I think. We don't have roosters. Intentionally, just to be nice to our neighbors, we haven't kept them, but we do really enjoy the eggs. Especially our kids really enjoy. The other day I saw my daughter riding around on her tricycle with one of our roosters in the little box in the back, just riding around in our backyard. So I just wanted to encourage you guys that they can be really nice pets. We really enjoy the eggs, and just from the standpoint of making more and more laws that will prevent homeowners from just having, we enjoy the eggs. The eggs are really important, and it gives us a sense of, I really would hate to lose those just because of the size of our lot, to be able to kind of homestead our own small piece of property. But as a new chicken owner, I just wanted to say that it's really has been a pleasant experience. We're very careful with our neighbors. And then, we also, one other solution that we had when we did have a rooster, we just shut the coop. You really can't hear it in a shut coop when, we hatch the eggs and then we see a rooster, and so we just shut the coop and wait till maybe 10 o'clock and open it up. So, just want to share my experience. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else? And another gentleman.
Good evening. My name is Alan Christian. Live at 415 Autumnwood Court. Lived here for the past year. Grew up in Smyrna. Was raised on an acre lot. 50 acres behind us was a working farm. I've got 3 small children. We have 10 hens right now. We had a rooster until yesterday. We took the rooster in at night, brought him out in the morning about 9 o'clock. In the afternoon, we put him back in before it got too loud because I wanted to be a good neighbor. Do they crow during the day? Sure they do, but not any more than my neighbor's dogs do. We have the children. I know some of my fondest memories as a child, and some of the greatest responsibilities I learned as a child was taking care of the animals, feeding them, watering them in the morning before I got ready for school. When I got out of school, I took care of that. My animals were fed before I was fed. It was just a responsibility I learned. And when we started having kids, I wanted the exact same thing. Numbers, restrictions on lot size, a little 1.2 acres in a nice neighborhood. And having chickens my whole life, does it matter if I have 1 chicken and needing only 1 square foot? Is it 15? Is it 20? Is it 30? We have laws in place. If there's a smell problem, call ordinance. Call control for that. If there's a sound problem, it's only different than the dogs, but if the rooster's crowing and that's a problem, go ahead and call. You don't need any rules on that. But I don't think that there should be a specific number. And if the lot's from 1.2 acre to a half acre, should that number change? I don't think so at all. If there's a problem with sound or smell, then there's a problem. Not any different than saying I have an aquarium in my house and I've got 10 fish versus 37 fish, depending on the size of my fish tank. So I love Roswell. I love living here. I think the restrictions of lot size, I don't agree with that. I know a lot of what I loved about Roswell moving here was this was still a city, but there's still some rural parts. To think that there's families that have lived here that were working farms 100 years ago, 150 years ago, that some of that farm's been sold out, and there's still a remaining acre, 5 acres, 10 acres, that they still may have a couple of chickens. They may still have goats. I know at the end of Mayor Wood's neighborhood, when we go to church every Sunday morning, one of our first stops is the end of his street to stop and feed the goats. And there's a commercial sign, you're welcome to feed them. Is there a problem with that? Are any of the neighbors complaining? No. Is he zoned agricultural? No, he's not. Well, the way it's going to be written now is every kid that's going to be wanting to go by, well, if we decide to complain, you're going to lose your goats. But there's no problem with anything there. And half of the Roswell community that have children, I guarantee you have stopped at that house one time or another. Same thing with the chickens now. A lot of folks want to come by their kids. My children that go to elementary school here, we took our kids in for one day for the pet day to bring the chicken in. Half the kids didn't even know what they were. Didn't know where the eggs came from. What a learning experience to actually still have that opportunity. But if there's a problem, yes, I decided for the rooster, we got rid of the rooster. He crowed all day long. I loved it. None of my neighbors complained. Half of them I got to church with, I asked them, is there a problem? None of them complained. But I knew eventually that was going to be a problem. And we're separated enough, but I made the decision, even though I was still bringing it in. But you know what? If the neighbors didn't complain, there was no problem. Should there be restriction on 1 bird, 5 birds, 10 birds, 37 birds if they're this big? If it's in my backyard and it's enclosed and quiet and nobody's seeing or complaining about it, why all of a sudden put a number on it? Why say 24, 25, 27? I understand living in a community. I understand living in a city. I moved here for a reason. I love it here. But to come in all of a sudden and say, this is what's been approved by the judge, this is what's on the books now, let's us pull together and let's write a new law, write a new restriction. There's already laws in place. New ones don't need to be written. But thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Question for you.
Yes, sir.
Question for you.
Yes.
What did you do with your rooster when you said bringing him in?
I'll tell you exactly. What did I do with it?
Okay.
I have an enclosed shed on my property.
It's out in your yard. You have an enclosed shed.
It's on my, yes, sir. It's
so you just put him in there overnight?
Sir?
So you just put him in there overnight?
Brought him in at night. It's got windows, and we bring him in, and I actually have a curtain on the shed. It's a nice shed, but bring him in there. There's curtains on it. And the thing is, when it starts getting dark, they go to sleep. So he'll start crowing about 8 o'clock in the morning because the light's starting to come in, but you can't hear him, but we bring him in. And the person that I took him to get rid of him lives near Roswell High School, and his family was one of the original farms of Roswell. And that farm's been sold off, and there's a development here. There's another development here. There's another one. He's down to 1.9 acres. And up until recently found out he had cancer, he probably had 40 goats. He's probably got 150 chickens over there right now. That's where my rooster went to, which is where they originally came from. He has a garden in the back where it's the honor system. Stop by and get some okra, get some cucumbers, get some corn, and leave $1 or $2 in there. If you want to come get some eggs, you can. And half the kids stop by. One of the first days I've moved into Roswell, I stopped at his house to meet the man. That's where they went back to. But based on y'all's new restrictions, all of a sudden, he's been here his whole life, and he's a fourth-generation person living in Roswell. All of a sudden now with these new ordinances, you're going to go to this 80-year-old man's house. So even though you've been here, your family's been here, we decided to put a number on your pets, and now you can't have these anymore. I just don't agree with that because everybody around, there's no problem. There's no sound problem. There's no smell problem. There's not any complaints. Just think we're all of a sudden writing new laws for no reason now. They're already on the books. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Any others like to make a comment? Yes, ma'am. In the center.
Hi, my name is Teresa Brown. I live at 1510 Oakfield Lane, Roswell. I'm actually here in support of Andrew. I was shocked to find out that he has 200-something birds at his house. I drive past his house several times a day. I see a few chickens that have only been loose since the flood came through and his enclosure was destroyed. I'm totally in support of the animals. I think grandfathering someone in, especially if they have a farm currently, is a good idea. I think moving forward for some of the other neighborhoods, putting restrictions on lot sizes or putting restrictions on the amount of animals is appropriate. But again, I've had no problems with Andrew. I live 5 houses away from him. I've never heard the animals. I've seen the chickens a couple of times, and that's it. Any questions? No, thank you.
Any further comments? Oh, yes, ma'am.
My name is Cherie Crow, and I live at 325 Alpine Drive. And I just want to comment on the noise and the any issues that I have personally with the chickens that live next door to my home. My children adore the chickens. They care for the chickens when Andy is out of town. And I do sleep with my windows open, and I enjoy it very much. I do not have a problem with roosters crowing, and if I do, I have a neighbor who is very responsible, very dependable, and I can call him and he will take care of his roosters immediately, even if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, which it's only happened once. So I do agree with everything everyone has said. You do have to be a responsible neighbor. You have to be a responsible community person, and I think we need to be responsible persons and respectful of each other, whether we live across town or next door to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, one more in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Carol Costley. I live at 1585 Oakfield Lane. I'm also a neighbor of Andrew's. I honestly didn't know he had chickens until I ran into him one day at Kroger, and he told me that he was the guy on TV. He's the guy that that the city was going after. I had no idea. He's a great neighbor. The chickens are not a problem. They've never been a problem. When I moved to Roswell 28 years ago, this was a farm community. Everyone asked me why I wanted to move so far out to live in Roswell, and that's why, because it was a farm community. I voted for every one of you at one time or another, and honestly, I'm surprised we're even here debating the chicken issue. This is what Roswell was supposed to be about, living out in the country. I don't know what to say. I'm just surprised we're even here discussing it. there shouldn't be a problem with chickens or quail or any of the other cute little pets that we have. They're no more offensive than dogs or cats. Or I support everybody here, and let's keep the chickens and be a good community. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further comments? Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. And Mr. Werdy, you talked one time, but if you have some new facts given your involvement with the issue, all right, we'll let everyone else up here probably look at me funny, but we'll let you come talk if you have some new facts to give. But please limit it to that.
I just got handed this a few minutes ago. I hadn't read it fully. On here it has some condition that says for non-commercial personal use only. I want to know how you verse a hobby such as coin collecting and selling coins over the internet, or taking eggs to a farmer's market, or taking vegetables to a farmer's market, whether that's hobby or whether that's commercial or non-commercial. And how the council feels about me wanting to take extra eggs to a farmer's market or to North Fulton Charities. If I give my eggs to North Fulton Charities, does that make me non-commercial? Whereas if I take them to the farmer's market and sell them there, does that make me commercial? The other issue I have is with the accessory structures. As you all are aware, I live in a floodplain. I can't build an accessory structure on my property. So again, I ask that I be exempted from the entire ordinance and be grandfathered in, because if I am held to the same standards everyone else is with the new ordinance, I'll have to get rid of every chicken I own. And I hate to leave the city I love. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So if there are no further comments, we will close the public hearing portion of this. And for Mr. DiPolito, given the nature of this one, would you like to begin with the motion or have comments from council before making a motion?
Actually, I have a couple of questions for staff prior to that. The issue of the mobile structure came up with the Planning Commission, and it's been pointed out on numerous conversations that some of these chicken coops are no larger than a doghouse. Is there a way to add some flexibility to this so that they don't have to require an accessory structure permit, or is there any latitude within this?
I'm sure there is some latitude related to determining the accessory structure. I think there's some, David, isn't the term permanently placed or something like that? I'm trying to remember the term of structure.
Yes. Our definition of structure is anything that is permanently attached to the ground. So if you want to change it from a structure to a enclosure, you might be able to have some kind of mobile enclosure, I guess.
Well, it would seem to me that by requiring an accessory structure, we're really requiring something fairly substantial, when in a lot of cases that's not even necessary. In Mr. Werdy's case, he can't even build one, so he has to have something more mobile and something smaller. So maybe we need to take a look at that and figure out how to make that more appropriate.
So we're dealing actually with Section E, the poultry enclosure. That's where the terms accessory structure is used a couple of times.
Right. So since this is the first reading, we have the opportunity to go back and just for the audience's benefit, go back and take a look at some of this and fine tune it. My other question is the question of Mr. Mayor, did you have some? Okay. My other question was for non-commercial. Mr. Davidson, how do we define something that's non-commercial? I think there is logic to the fact that people may have some extra eggs they want to bring to a farmer's market. Planning Commission brought that up. I think that's very reasonable. The intent is to avoid a commercial operation. So how do we deal with that?
I believe we have a definition of commercial. But either way, you could exempt farmers market. It could be for personal use or farmers market, non-commercial uses other than farmers market or something to that effect. We could come up with wording to allow farmers market, but not like the retail sale of eggs at the house.
Maybe we ought to look at that, because I think it's just, I think we understand the intent is not to have we don't want a chicken farm in somebody's property, but we want them to have some flexibility to do things like that, to use the eggs. I'll just go ahead and comment then. And I am in favor of backyard chickens. I like the idea of supporting urban agriculture in Roswell. I think that is something that is coming forward throughout the country and something that we need to address. What we do need to address is the people who don't act responsibly. We had a lot of people up here who talked and mentioned that they're responsible owners, and I'm sure they are, because we haven't heard a whole lot from them or from their neighbors. So it's not the responsible people we have to be concerned about. It's the ones who are less responsible, and that's what we're trying to do with this ordinance. I do support the ordinance. I like the comments made by the Planning Commission. I agree with eliminating geese and turkeys, since they are larger birds. I think there's a great argument, as evidenced by Mr. Werdy's display here with his birds, that some of them are extremely small. So 25 seems to be a reasonable number, as long as they're not on the larger side of the spectrum. Given the other recommendations that they had, at this point, I'm not convinced about adjusting that number 25 for lot size. I'm willing to move forward with just a flat number of 25. We've already talked about the issue of commercial use. Then they had one other comment about the motion-activated lighting. I think that's probably unnecessary. I think that last line of Section F may not be necessary. And then as far as grandfathering, I agree that we need to have a grandfather clause that allows whatever's currently being used to, whatever's currently in place to remain, and I wouldn't want to restrict that. And those are my comments, and I'll put all that in the form of a motion for approval.
So that is your motion? Everything you just said? I didn't write all those down exactly, but
I'm sorry, I probably should have started that with my motion to approve first reading.
All right, so we have a motion. Is everyone clear as to what the elements are on that? Because I do believe that's pretty much what's written here, except for eliminating that last sentence in the Section F.
Yes, I'll restate my motion is to approve first reading with the Planning Commission's recommendation, with the exception of the limitation on the lot size, which is their recommendation number 3.
Okay. So we have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Councilwoman Nguyen. And we'll open up for questions and discussions from council. Councilwoman Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Sorry, but this is the quietest I've ever seen the mayor before. It's unnerving, really. But I kind of like it. Contrary to what some people think, I am not anti-chicken. My uncles had farms, and I gathered eggs, and I think they're great. But the thing is, we still have to limit, I think, how many we have. And I have to agree with Councilman DePolito. The people here tonight are responsible people. They understand the responsibilities of being a good neighbor. I think just about any time we have any type of ordinances, we always get the responsible people out here to talk. So what I'm going to say tonight, I really still don't like the idea of roosters. but if we can do something with the noise ordinance to make sure that they are enclosed, I don't know if we want to add that to the ordinance or not. That's one of my problems, because to me, I understand that some people say roosters are there to protect the hens, but roosters are there for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to get those eggs hatching. So anyway, I will go along with Councilman Depolito's changes here, but I still like to see if we can look at, and I'm not going to add it to this amendment, but if we can see if there's a way that we can add something to the enclosures of roosters, or will the noise ordinance take care of that?
All right. Other comments from other council members? Mr. Orleans.
I agree with that one point that Councilwoman Wynn had mentioned. That's why I was asking people how they handled their roosters at night, and maybe in addition to the ordinance before the second reading of some kind of requirement for enclosure overnight, so that we are protecting neighbors from the people who don't take care of their pets. Other than that, I'm in favor of the ordinance moving forward.
All right. Any other comments? Mr. Mayor, would you like us to read anything for you? I agree with you. This is a little unnerving with him sitting right there without saying anything. Well, I will follow his lead, as he often does, and make some comments that I have no problem, or I'm okay with looking for grandfathering options and certainly lot size in some areas. But I do have concern, particularly when we're talking about subdivision homes where everyone is right next to each other and behind each other. And folks I've talked to who live in subdivisions, it's one thing to have chickens already there, but if you looked at your neighbor you could have as many as 5 sides, perhaps, having those tomorrow, that causes great consternation. So I do have some concerns about that. And I, frankly, whether it's realistic or not, based on the way things actually do happen, that is what people are concerned about. I am okay on moving forward on the first reading. And for everyone's information, you may already know this, but we have a first reading here. We have many comments and other work to do between now and the second reading on December the 14th. So there'll probably be a lot of work to go into this. But for at this point, I'm okay to move forward with the first reading and continue working on this. So are there any other comments from any other council members? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All opposed, and that passes unanimously, except without me, I guess. I raised my hand out of habit, but without me. Exactly. Well, we are going to take a short break. As many of you know, we often say 5 minutes, and it turns into what it can be. But if you would, try to make it no more than just over 5 minutes. But we'll take a short break here and come back. Thank you very much. All right. Yeah. I won't tell you what the mayor actually just said, but no. Everyone can make our way back up here and we get back to business. And we will take the next case. Mr. Townsend, please.
Bacon here. The next case is PB 0902, the Sutton Country Day School. This is a small Parkway Village small tract approval, which was deferred from the last Mayor and Council zoning meeting. This is a 1.15 acre parcel on King Road. The request is for a small tract status with a variance to the 40-foot front landscape area. The property is currently zoned R2 with a Parkway Village designation. It currently exists with a 7,263 square foot building. These are the past actions that have taken place on the property. In 1998, the property was zoned R2 for a daycare center. In 92, the Parkway Village district was overlaid on top of the property. In 2003, the daycare use was removed from the R2 designation. In 2008, the daycare business, which was occupying the location, discontinued for more than 3 months. That brings us to the reason why we're in front of you for the Parkway Village small tract. This is an aerial photograph. You can see it's surrounded by commercial development on the east, or the east, west, and south side. The Roswell High School is to the north. This shows the Parkway Village line is the purple line. The subject property is in red. This is an aerial photograph. King Road is along the southern of the photograph. As you can see, the daycare parking in the front, the building, and the structures in the rear of the property. This is a proposed site plan that has been submitted by the applicant that includes the Parkway Village pillars and railing in the front of the property. It shows the parking located in the rear of the property, with the dumpster also moved to the back with the access along the southern of the building. These are the recommended conditions from staff to have the development conform with the site plan that was received on October 28th, and to provide a porous pavement for all the additional parking as per the environmental department. Staff would recommend approval of the Parkway Village as well as the variance to the 40-foot landscape requirement along King Road. Summary staff recommends approval.
We deferred this because there were a number of issues that we brought up. Have there been any developments in those since that time?
The change in the site plan includes all of the environmental issues that have taken place. There is no change in the number of parking being proposed in the front on the site plan that exists. They're still requesting the 5 spaces that were in question as part of that approval at the last meeting.
All right, thank you. Any questions of council for Mr. Townsend? Mr. Dippolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Townsend, could you go back to the aerial for a second? Okay. The parking spaces that were in question, it looks like there's a small bus there right now, and there's a slope that it looks like the property slopes up about 10 feet, probably from the street. Is that about
approximately? Yes.
Approximately.
Yes.
So the applicant is now proposing. They still need that one variance, but what they want to do is put in additional landscaping, put in the typical fencing and columns for Parkway Village to make it look like Parkway Village, even though the buffer isn't as deep. Is that correct? Okay. And all the other issues that we had, or we were discussing in the last council meeting, essentially have been eliminated because they have reduced this down to the daycare use and just the parking in the back. So the only variance we're looking for is this one variance for the buffer on the front.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? All right. Seeing none, we'll hear from the applicant, please.
Want that one? Yeah, that's great. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, ladies and gentlemen of the council, I'm Don Rollator, 11660 Alpharetta Highway, Suite 630, Roswell, Georgia. Let me apologize to you tonight. I didn't bring any live exhibits, so I hate to be outdone technologically, but we're just going to have to do the best we can. I'm here with Marilyn Wancat, who's the owner of this property, together with her husband. We hoped Brad Riffle would be here tonight, but Brad is down with the flu, and we left him at home. So if we have any deep engineering questions, we're going to get some innovative answers. The property is the daycare center on King Road that's between the shopping center and Roswell High School. You can tell from the picture that it's a highly developed commercial area with a big high school beside it. It's been a daycare center since 1988. It was built as a daycare center. That's what the structure was. There have been no changes to the structure, landscape, or parking. In 1992, the applicant gave the city 12 feet of right-of-way to make it comply with the village district zoning. This property is the northernmost property on King Road that's in the Parkway Village District. The owners lost their daycare tenant, and for more than 3 months, they did not find a new tenant. They didn't understand at the time and didn't know, but with that vacancy of 3 months, they lost their ability to use this property as daycare. In the interim, the city had changed the R2 zoning ordinance, and this property was zoned R2, so that daycare was no longer a permitted use under the R2 district. That loss was not the result of my client's action, it's just something that occurred. So what they're left with is they have a building and a structure and everything in place that's been used as a daycare for 20 years, and they need your consent and your action to continue using it. The only changes they will propose will be for your benefit. They seek small tract status and to continue to use the property as a daycare center. That's a permitted use within the Parkway Village District. Applicant has a tenant that's committed to operate a daycare facility, and then there are other uses requested. The one variance is important to us, and I'll explain it to you. A daycare center such as this has one driveway, and if you look up front, those parking spaces that are there are of utmost importance. The way people use this daycare center is early in the morning. They bring children from infants to 3 or 4 years old. They carry them inside with all of their paraphernalia, and they turn them over for that care. And between 4:30 and 6:30 in the afternoon, the same parents pull back up there, and they pick the children up. If we had to eliminate part of that parking, which is necessary and important, and we put it in the back, I measured this afternoon in my one fit of engineering expertise, and I found that it's a minimum of 250 feet from the back parking spaces to the front door. On a February day when it's 34 degrees and raining, or on a January day when it's clear and 19 degrees, it's a tough thing to put on a small child. The reason for this request is it's what's always been there. It doesn't bother anybody, and we're more than willing to come up front and to make it otherwise conform with the village district. We will do the 3-rail white vinyl fencing, we will do the posts, we will do all those things. But the parents would tell you that they don't want to drag the little ones, can you switch me over? Through the cold and wet when they don't have to. Those are my grandkids. They are trouble, but they live in Birmingham, so we're all safe. So there is a compelling reason for the variance, and it is a hardship, and that is to get the children to the facility they need and to get it done properly. Everything else, I believe, is in order. We filed the revised site plan. We agree with each of Mr. Townsend's conditions. They're accurate. He's been excellent to work with, as is Jackie, and we just don't have any issues. I apologize if before my entry into this things were a little confused and a little muddled. We understand now what we want to be and how we want to do it and what we're trying to get to. We need your support in approving this as small tract status and giving us this variance in order to let us continue what's been done since 1988. That's our request. I'd like to reserve time for rebuttal if I need it. Other than that, if we can answer any questions for you, please let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Relator. Any questions from council, the applicant? Ready? Seeing none.
Thank you,
sir. We'll open up public comment on this project. Is there anyone who would like to comment for or against at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any comments from council, or would you like to make a motion, Mr. DiPolito?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I'd be happy to make a motion. I move to approve PV 09-02 along with the variance request to reduce the buffer from 40 feet down to 10 feet. With the recommendations of staff as well.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Motion second. Any further comments from council or questions? Seeing none, we'll have a vote. And I actually can vote. The mayor is technically presiding. I'm just talking for him, which I know that's got to drive him crazy. So all in favor, please raise your hand. He apparently is. All opposed, so it passes unanimously. Okay. Next case, please. Mr. Townsend.
Yes, this is RZ 0914 for a medical office building located at 2745 Holcomb Bridge Road. This is approximately 1 acre parcel. The applicant is requesting approximately 4,500 square foot single story medical building. The current property is zoned FCA with an underlying zoning of AG1 in Fulton County. The proposed zoning is OP, Office Professional. The proposed zoning would allow for the construction of a medical office building. This is the current zoning map for the City of Roswell. This is the zoning showing the AG1 on the triangle parcel. The one conflict that staff has with the proposal is our future land use map has this area indicated as residential high density. That is the reason staff is recommending denial of the proposal. This is an aerial photograph showing the triangled area that's being proposed for the medical building. You see residential to the north, assisted living and commercial to the east, and commercial across Holcomb Bridge, as well as the entrance to the school. Staff is recommending denial of this proposal since it is in conflict with the comprehensive plan, which has the designation of high-density residential. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this application with one amendment to the conditions of condition number 2 related to if there was a conflict with GDOT requirements, that they would prevail over a conflict with RDOT conditions. In summary, staff had recommended denial of this application of the rezoning. Planning Commission recommended approval 6-0 of this application. Staff recommended, I believe there were 5 conditions that if council wishes to approve, we would recommend those conditions as part of this rezoning. Let me speak to one of the conditions was for a requested access, interparcel access to the east. That would allow for the property to the east access to the light and would eliminate a curb cut along Holcomb Bridge, which we feel would be beneficial for both properties involved. If you have any further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Just one question on that. Isn't it technically true that GDOT always trumps RDOT? So does that need to be an extra condition?
It wouldn't need to be. No, it doesn't need to be added. I just wanted to make sure that that was what Planning Commission had recommended.
Okay. Any further questions? Mr. Orleans.
Brad, this is more from my memory. This is talking about proposed site plan indicating 5-foot wide sidewalks on Holcomb Bridge Road. I remember saying, weren't we trying to get on Main Street 8-foot wide sidewalks, or am I thinking of something else?
You know, Dave? I don't know, Mr. Orleans, but we'll check that through the LDP process to make sure they're conforming.
Well, it's good to know that your memories are as bad as mine.
Any other questions? Mr. DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Townsend, the reason for denial by staff is that it's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. Do you have any other concerns about this project as proposed?
Sir. No, sir. I think it would fit into Holcomb Bridge with what's up and down that road.
Do you have a site plan you can put up on the screen? One of the conditions is to add interparcel access through the rear where the dumpster and that one parking space is?
That's correct.
And there's adequate room to find a parking space somewhere, get the dumpster in, and get that drive lane in?
They're one parking space over, code-wise, so they could actually eliminate the parking. I mean, if the dumpster could move to this location, and the access point could go like.
And the applicant is agreeable to that condition?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Temp, and council members. I feel a little inadequate with no livestock and no photos of my children, but I'm here on behalf of the sick and the weary. My name is Joe Alcock with Rutledge Alcock Architects, and represent the owners of this property. It is, as staff said already, it is zoned Fulton County Annex, and we are asking it to be rezoned to OP, Office Professional, for medical office use. We are aware that it does not fit into the city's comprehensive development plan for 2025. However, we feel it is adjacent to a number of other office commercial uses. It's in keeping with the pattern that's developing on Holcomb Bridge. Staff made 5 recommendations, and Commission Council approved us with Planning Council approved us with those 5 conditions. We are willing and able to comply with all of those conditions. I guess at this time I'm here to answer any questions or deal with any issues.
All right, any questions of council for the applicant? Councilwoman Price.
Of the 5 conditions, are any of those considered to be onerous that you really don't want to do?
The expense related to the traffic signal is costly, but we are willing to undertake that project. Other than that, none of them are onerous or a burden for the project.
Any other questions? And if you'd like, if you have any pictures of your children in your wallet, you can put those there, or nieces, nephews, or even one of the fake pictures that's in there. Maybe help. All right, any other questions? Councilwoman Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to clarify something to get it on record. At the DRB, they suggested that you relocate the building or twist the building around or something to save the 2 trees, and I see that you have a letter in your packet, or in our packet. So if you could address that, so I'd like to address that condition that the DRB put on you.
Absolutely. At our initial design review board, it was there are 2 large oak trees on this is actually kind of the eastern border of the property. One is 26 inches and the other is 28 inches. As you can see, our building slightly impacts those critical root zones, these dotted lines being the critical root zone. It was suggested that we, if you will, our building is shaped as kind of a boomerang, and it was suggested that if we flipped it so the boomerang went this way, that we might possibly be able to avoid impacting those root zones. We went through a number of exercises and attempted to do that. In all cases, because of the location of this driveway and the topography required to come down, there was still an impact to the root zone. City of Roswell tree ordinance actually says if we impact even 1% of the critical root zone, that those trees are deemed destroyed, and we go through a recompense process. However, we were able to reshape the grading, pull this building up a little bit, and deal with some of the drainage that comes around here, and impact, I believe the 26-inch tree we impact 18.7%, the 28-inch oak we impact 11.5%. And if we apply National Arborist Association's rules. They say anything under 20% is acceptable. You can go up to 30% as long as there's a kind of a monitoring and tree prescription to maintain the health. So we believe we can keep those grading and construction activities away from those trees. We will end up paying the recompense fee per the ordinance, but it is in our interest to preserve those trees. We think it's a great backdrop and to our property, so we will do our best to save them.
Thank you, Mr. Alcock.
All right, thank you, and thank you for doing that. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Any comments for or against the project from members? Yes, ma'am. And as before, if you would, state your name and address and fill out a comment card at some point.
Hi, my name is Jill Fagalde. I live at 9065 12 Stones Drive, but I'm also the owner of the property. I'm the owner of this property and the property adjacent, Seven Gables Masonry and Roofing. And we've had the pleasure of living in Roswell for 18 years now. Martin's Landing, 12 Stones, and when we had an opportunity to start a business, we said we want to be close to home. I was tired of traveling down to Perimeter every day, and my husband was tired of traveling to Conyers every day. And we decided that this corridor east of 400 was the best location for us. We enjoyed the schools. And when we purchased this property, we said if we put a building there and we make it attractive, customers will come. And that's what we found. We've had a most wonderful response from the Alpharetta and Roswell community, and we're proud to be business owners, business people that buy in Roswell, live in Roswell, work in Roswell, and raising our grandchildren in Roswell, but I didn't bring my pictures today. However, I do want to mention there's two things that are very important that were said at the Planning Commission meeting, and I really appreciate it. And one of them was that this piece of property, when we purchased it with my husband and I, we always thought we were going to do a medical building. And then time went along, we had other priorities and ill mother-in-law that we had to take care of, foreign countries. So we put the property up for sale, always hoping to have a good partner next door because it impacts our business dramatically. And we've always been congratulated on keeping our property attractive, and we wanted something similar next door. So when this project came along, we thought, this is it. This is just perfect. The school's across the street. The high school's down the street. We have no medical facilities anywhere close without having to hit 400 in traffic or the other direction. And tax base wise, it just couldn't be a better fit for the community itself. And we thought, let's go with it. We have we have the nursing home next door also. And frankly, I just couldn't see anything better for our community right now than this particular project. But I also really want to thank Mr. Alcock, because they've done a wonderful job trying to be immediately a part of the community, even though they are not from here, the people that are interested in this particular business. And the trees, everything, they've gone to tremendous effort. They've done drilling, they've looked for landfill, they've looked for the drainage. We couldn't ask for better business partners right now, and I hope you will approve it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Speak. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Move back to council. Any questions or comments, or would Mr. Dippolito like to make a motion?
I would like to move to approve RZ 09-14 with the 5 staff conditions.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Motion seconded by Mr. Orleans. Any further comments from council? Yes, sir.
Just one clarification for staff. I did not include the Planning Commission recommendation, but that's really not necessary, is it?
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. Again, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. And we'll move to the next item.
Thank you.
The next item, PVST 0903, is asking for deferral to the December 7th, 2009 council meeting.
Any comments, questions? Anything from the public relating to this this item? It will be deferred until December 7th. You can, if you're not able to make it at that meeting, you can speak tonight, but we will also, of course, have public hearing at that time. All right, seeing none. Mr. DiPolito.
Move to defer PV 09-03 Masterworks Atlanta LLC, 210 West Crossville Road, land lot 366, to the December, help me with the date,
7th.
December 7th meeting.
All right, there's a motion to defer. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Orleans. All in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous, it looks like. That passes. They're deferred to December the 7th. Next item.
Next item on the agenda is RZ 09-10, a text amendment regarding pawn shops and check cashing establishments within the city. This is the second reading. Mr. Townsend.
Yes, this is the second reading of the pawn shop and check cashing establishments. The main section of the code that's being added requires that any new locations be a minimum of 5,000 feet from another pawn shop or check cashing establishment. This is the map that was shown at committee to council of the existing ones. The red line shows a 5,000-foot location. Staff would recommend approval of the second reading of RZ 09-010.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Any questions or comments from council? Mr. Davidson, please read the ordinance.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the City of Roswell zoning ordinance regarding pawn shops and check cashing establishments within the City of Roswell. Now, therefore, pursuant to their authority, the mayor and council adopt the following ordinance. Article 3 of the Roswell zoning ordinance, section 3.1, definitions, is amended by adding new definitions to read as follows and deleting the existing definition of pawnbroker, text of which is incorporated herein by reference. The zoning ordinance of the City of Roswell is further amended by adding as permitted uses to table 6.1 pawn shops and check cashing establishments to read as follows, again the text of which is incorporated herein by reference. And the zoning ordinance of the City of Roswell is further amended by adding a new chapter 10.40 pawn shops and check cashing establishment to Article 10 specific use requirements to read as follows, text again of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved this will be the second reading of the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. We're running out of people to say anything, but if there is any public comment, anyone would like to speak? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. DiPolito, would you like to make a motion?
Move to approve RZ 09-10, the text amendment regarding pawn shops and check cashing establishments within the city.
Motion for approval. Is there a second? Mr. Orleans is, he's the one I can hear best. But we'll take Mr. Orleans this time. He beat you in there. We'll get you the next one. That's any further comment from council? Motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Passes unanimously. Did I see you raise your hand? You didn't. Oh, no. That's 5. Anyone in opposition? That's 5-1. All right. 5-1, the motion passes. Next item, please.
Next item is RZ 09-13, text amendment regarding parking requirements in the historic district. This is the first reading. Mr. Townsend.
Yes, the text amendment is proposing to add language controlling or establishing that any structure 50 years of age or older in the C1 zoning district located in the historic area would be exempt from the off-street parking requirements, and that there would be no let loss for them to change the use of the property. This helps the historic area of the city control what type of buildings it currently has and allows flexibility for them to change a use while not requiring additional parking in those historic areas. Staff would recommend approval of the first reading for this text amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. And just one clarification, that was Councilwoman Price voting against the previous item. And Mr. Davidson, would you please read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the City of Roswell zoning ordinance regarding parking requirements for buildings in the historic district of Roswell. Now, therefore, pursuant to their authority, the mayor and city council adopt the following ordinance. Zoning ordinance of the City of Roswell is hereby amended by adding to existing section 17.3.1 as follows. The new text is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the first reading of the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. I guess it's on the other side. Anyone? Yes, Mr. DiPolito.
Mr. Townsend, I was reading through the HPC comments and was understanding what Lonnie Mims had commented on and realized that I was very confused about what we were trying to accomplish here in this ordinance.
I read them too.
I think originally what we were trying to do is that if somebody changes the use, that we were trying to have no net loss essentially in the historic district.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we're really looking at no net loss for public as well as off-street parking spaces, would we not?
I don't believe the public space number conversation ever got brought up as part of committee, or at least it was all related to off-street parking.
But when you read the ordinance as it is, I don't think we're accomplishing what our original goal was, which was to make sure that the total number of parking spaces in the area didn't get reduced.
Right.
So whether they're off-street spaces or does that make a difference? Because there could be public spaces that aren't necessarily off-street.
Mr. Dipley, could you give us an example?
Well, I guess I was thinking of like the parking areas in the parking lot that we made. Just
the public parking lot off of Mimosa.
Right. So that's considered off-street parking, right? Now, if somebody they changed the use of their building and they put in a restaurant and the restaurant requires more parking, they can say, well, my customers can just go and use the public parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
So that has impacted that parking.
Right.
So it just was very confusing to me, the way it was worded here. And maybe I'm getting confused.
Write it out.
You want to write
it down?
Oh, he's going to breathe on you.
He's going to breathe on you.
You have a mask? Right.
So we're just trying to
You have a question?
change that. I don't see that. I need to see changing use, limiting use because of the parking.
Given the nature of his situation, we'll give him a little leeway here.
Okay.
Can you kind of sum up what he just said?
Well, he was saying that there's the issue was that in the C1 district there is no requirement for off-street parking. So by having a change in the use, you don't want that to trigger the off-street parking. Is that correct? I'm okay with the concept. I just want to make sure we have it worded correctly, because I think what we're trying to do is just make sure that we don't have a use that comes in that is very parking intensive, and because they're not required to have parking on their piece of property, that it doesn't negatively impact the other spaces. So if for the other businesses in the area. So if this does that, I'm okay with it. I'm just confused by the wording.
So is that something to fix tonight or between now and the second reading?
Between now and the second reading.
I didn't know if you had any suggestions or not. But all right.
Well, I thought I did, but now I've even confused myself.
Just to make clear, this is the first reading, and if this passes, it'll go to the second reading in December. So that's an option. Any other questions or comments from council? All right. We'll open the floor to any questions or comments from the public. What you guys might be here. All right, well, seeing none, we will close public comment. And Mr. Mayor, do you have something to try to say? Or? All right. Well, would you like to make a motion or hold on to this?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that to approve the first reading, but I would like for staff to get together with legal and just make sure that we're hitting the intent, the original intent here, and adjust the wording as necessary.
All right, that's a motion with comments for possible changes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Wynn. Are there any further questions or comments from council? All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Looks like everyone. All right, it passes unanimously. And the next item, please.
Next item is RZ 09-12, a text amendment regarding animal hospitals and veterinary clinics. This is the first reading. Mr. Townsend.
Yes, this would allow for animal hospitals and veterinary clinics. This is the current OP designated areas within the city. Staff would recommend approval of the first reading of the text amendment. This allows them to go into the OP zoning designation. They have the same controls and stipulations as existing animal hospitals and veterinary clinics. Staff would recommend approval.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Any questions or comments? Then we'll read it in a second. But all right, Mr. Davidson, if you would read it, please.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the City of Roswell zoning ordinance to allow as a conditional use in the OP zoning district the uses of animal hospitals and veterinary clinics. Now, therefore, pursuant to their authority, the mayor and city council adopt the following ordinance. Zoning ordinance of the City of Roswell is hereby amended to allow the uses of animal hospitals and veterinary clinics as a conditional use in the OP zoning district by changing Table 6.1 as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference. They have approved. This is the first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Any questions or comments from the council? None. We'll open up the floor for public comment. Only a few left. To come back to Councilwoman Price. Yes, ma'am.
I just was curious the impetus for this change.
In looking in analyzing our current OP designation, as well as where veterinary hospitals and clinics were approved, they're mostly in our C3 zoning designation. This issue was taken to committee and recommended that we open up the OP designation for this type of use. I think we came with 11 or 12 existing sites that we had, and I think this would be a good use for reuse some of our bank buildings or spaces like that in dealing with them. And we felt that the animal clinic and the vet hospital would not have a greater impact on that type of OP designation.
Thank you.
And so just to make clear, we did offer public comment. There being none, we'll close the public hearing. And then any other questions or comments of council or a motion?
Move to approve the first reading of RZ 09-12, a text amendment regarding animal hospitals and veterinary clinics.
Motion to approve the first reading. Is there a second? Anybody? Oh, Councilwoman Henry. We're all getting involved now, or falling asleep. But all right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Let's raise your hand. That's unanimous. Passes unanimously. Next final item, please.
The next item is initiation of a text amendment to amend the zoning ordinance regarding non-conforming signs. Mr. Townsend.
This is a zoning text amendment to be initiated related to non-conforming signs. The draft ordinance in your package does not include strike-throughs and underlines. What I've put on the screen does that. It shows that the language or dismountable material is being proposed for deletion, and we're adding the word or in Section A. In Section B, we're adding the language structural changes and we're also adding or technology currently being used on the, and striking through the of this section in the Section B. Staff is recommending approval of the initiation of the text amendment for non-conforming existing signs.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. I do have a question of Mr. Davidson, actually, that we had the discussion on what the reasons for this. This covers all the things that we think could ever come forward of somebody trying to...
No way.
I don't want it to come back
as
to
much
that.
as much as I can tell right now, at the current moment.
All right. All right. Are there any comments or questions from council? Any comments or questions from the public? Mr. DiPolito.
Move to approve the initiation of a text amendment to amend the zoning ordinance regarding non-conforming signs.
Motion to approve initiation. Is there a second? Second. Councilwoman Nguyen. Motion and a second. All in favor? Further comments? I think we got everybody. Mr. Owens, too? He's busy. That's a unanimous approval. That concludes the items. However, we have one recommendation for closure to discuss litigation. And since I'm not presiding, I can actually make the motion myself, I think. I'll do that. Any second for closure to discuss litigation? Second by Councilman DiPolito. All in favor? Raise your hands. Looks like we got everybody unanimous, and the meeting is adjourned.